Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan Roth, the Motor City Madmouth, and as usual, with the two guys I have on here, this broadcast is at Georgia Field. The guy that graduated from Savannah State University, Xavier McKnight, joins us, and Mel Farr lives in the Atlanta area. And first of all, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. How about yourself? As always, it's great to be on the program.
Great to have both of you guys. I really enjoy you guys very much. So, it's something I look forward to every single week. So with that said, okay, tonight we're going to be talking basketball and football for that matter. We're going to be all over the map. So, Xavier, go ahead and take off and tell us where you want us to go.
Well, Scott, I actually need to throw an audible into play here because we actually have received some breaking news from an article on ESPN. The Phillies and the Marlins have had their makeup games. The date is now set. And the teams will meet 7 times in 5 days, including a pair of doubleheaders from September 10th to the 14th in Miami. So the Phillies and the Marlins makeup game dates have been set, according to this article that I am reading now on ESPN that came in just a few moments ago.
Well, very good. Thanks for bringing that attention. I know the Marlins are getting used to these 7-inning doubleheaders. They had one the other day with the Baltimore Orioles, and got to give those fish a lot of credit. You know, this team has had a lot of issues, and somehow, some way, they're quietly 5-1. Unbelievable. And I go on the regular Zoom calls with Don Mattingly, and I wonder what type of magic he's working, but that depth organization has a lot of depth. So thanks for bringing that up, Xavier. So with that said, we're going to go from the diamond to the gridiron. Go ahead, Xavier. Take over.
So The Athletic published an article just a few days ago ranking the NFL offenses that they have in order before the 2020 season takes place. They do these rankings every off season anyway, but this one in particular is very interesting because we know the new look Tampa Bay Buccaneers being led now by quarterback Tom Brady. That still feels pretty weird to say, but being led by quarterback Tom Brady and tight end Rob Gronkowski, among other great players on that team. They have them ranked number 11th overall. And Mel, I want to start this thing off with you. Do you believe The Athletic has this ranking correctly, or are they undermining how great the Bucs offense could potentially be? Because the Bucs have potentially 3 great tight ends. I believe Tom Brady could help turn the career of O.J. Howard around. There may be a reason that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers chose to hold on to O.J. Howard, knowing that Cameron Brake was still there and Rob Gronkowski was coming in. Then you have 2 pair of 1,000-yard receivers, Pro Bowl receivers, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And they just signed in a veteran running back in LaShawn McCoy. They drafted another running back in the draft, and they're sharing up that offensive line. So do you feel The Athletic got this ranking correct? Or do you believe they're undermining how good the Bucs offense could potentially be?
I think it's about right. Tom Brady, obviously, he's going to bring some stability to that position that they have not enjoyed in the number since Jameis Winston has been a quarterback there, or even so I think they got it right. I think they look at the weapons that they have there. I think that the tight ends will probably play a bigger role this year because I think that Tom Brady is very comfortable throwing the ball to the tight ends, obviously, with the success that he had in New England with Gronkowski. But I think they got this probably about right. I think they have some dynamic weapons. I think Tom Brady's going to enjoy something that he hasn't had up in New England. He's got some dynamic receivers there in Tampa Bay. So I think he's going to have a lot of fun with this offense. The running game, we'll have to see how that shapes up. But I think he has some dynamic weapons to throw to in the passing game, without question.
So here's what I'll say in regards to that. You talk about them adding LaShawn McCoy. It's not necessarily as big of an addition as it would have been, say, 4 to 5 years ago. But he's still a veteran running back, and he also just so happens to be coming off of a Super Bowl championship, being a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, who defeated the 49ers in the previous Super Bowl, as we all know. Now, I want to read off the top 8 offenses that they have ranked off to you before I give you my opinion on this. They have the Chiefs ranked number 1. I agree with that. The Baltimore Ravens ranked number 2. I agree with that as well. Then, we kind of get into a little pickle with this thing here. They have the Saints, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Colts. That rounds out the top 8. I'm not sure which rounds out the 9th and 10th spot there, but I'll tell you right now, I'm willing to say that the Bucs are top 10 and slide the Indianapolis Colts down further from them, just simply because I don't know what Phillip Rivers is going to bring to the Indianapolis Colts offense. So I don't believe the Colts should be ranked higher than them, but I just about agree with everyone else because Arizona finished the season ranked 13th last year, and this was before they added DeAndre Hopkins to their team. Kyler Murray's going into year 2 with Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, going into year 2, and Larry Fitzgerald has been a steady veteran force on that team, and he will continue to be so. I believe the 49ers are ranked just about where they need to be ranked at number 6. Not sure exactly what rookie wide receiver Brandon Ayuk is going to bring. Losing Emmanuel Sanders, we'll see how big that's going to be. The Seahawks, I agree with that. The Cowboys being ranked number 4, I agree with that. And the Saints being ranked number 3, I can agree with that as well. Part of me actually wants to flip the Cowboys and the Saints, but I'm not going to do that just simply because I don't trust Dak Prescott in games over Drew Brees. Scott, what are your thoughts on the Athletic having the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ranked number 11th overall?
I think it's fair for now. And the only thing I'll say about this, Xavier and Mel, is I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of all teams probably could have used a preseason game or two to try to get the offense in sync. You have Tom Brady getting used to Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich. So I think they could have been. I think it's fair right now. I like what you said, though, in terms about the addition of LaShawn McCoy. I think it's what you call a very safe addition. Is he an impact player? No. But again, when you shore up your offense around LaShawn McCoy, you don't know what Rob Gronkowski really does have left. But you do have the familiarity factor with Tom Brady. And again, we all know that Bruce Arians is a pretty good offensive coach. I think it's fair right now.
I think LaShawn McCoy helps you more so in the passing game.
Right. Yeah, he's a dual threat. He's a dual threat.
He's going to be a great safety valve for Tom Brady. I don't think so much in the running game, because the running game is a commitment. You got to be committed to running the football. But I think he's another dynamic weapon for him in the passing game.
Yeah, no question about it, Mel. You're right. Anytime you have a dual threat player like you do with LaShawn McCoy, they can only help you, not hurt you. And he's not being asked to go out there and get 1,000,000 yards. You just want him to be your little slant pass, screen pass out of the backfield, get you 5-7 yards when you're in trouble. Totally agree.
And Scott, it's very interesting that you bring up why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers needed a preseason game more so than any of these teams. I just received a notification from Bleacher Report with Tom Brady saying today in a statement that it's tough to learn the playbook. Brady said, quote, "I really haven't had to do that in 19 years. That's really tough." So that's going to be something to watch out for.
Well, sure. That's where COVID-19 obviously comes into play, right?
You don't learn the playbook in the game. You learn the playbook in practice. It's hard to learn it in the classroom. I can tell you this from my own experience. You're going to learn a certain amount of it in the classroom. But as far as getting your timing down with your receivers, that's, you have to have game speed in order to do that. So that might be where, he may have needed a few preseason games so he can have game speed with his receivers. Practice speed, you try to practice at game speed, but then you don't have the same adrenaline flow going. So you're actually playing at another level once you get out there during a game, and your speed is probably, you're playing even faster in a game than you would be playing in practice, even though you try to simulate a game speed in practice.
Well, sure. That's where COVID-19 obviously is going to be a factor with every team. No preseason games. Everybody talks about you don't need that many preseason games, blah, 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 4-2. That doesn't matter. You do need at least 1 or 2 preseason games. But obviously we know that 2020 is uncharted territory, unprecedented. So this is a hand that Tom Brady and everybody else in the NFL is dealing with it. And they're all dealing with it, just not Tom Brady. And we know full well that there has been a lot of turnover, and there are some signal callers in other places. Teddy Bridgewater would be yet another beneficiary of preseason games, but that's for another show. But I think that Mel helps me make my point. LaShawn McCoy is a good safety valve out of the passing game, and that's where Tom Brady can use the wraps. Continue on.
Well, I definitely agree with the both of you on that there, especially you, Scott, on your point there. Listen, I'm really excited to watch this Bucs offense and this Bucs team go to work this year. And, we'll just have to see if they're going to be better than that number 11th overall ranking. And we now transition from the Bucs of the NFL to the Bucs of the NBA. And from the point that I pitched this topic to Scott just about a little over 2 hours ago to where we are now, when I pitched the topic to Scott, the Milwaukee Bucks were trailing the Miami Heat, who were without Jimmy Butler and Goran Dragic today in one of their regular season bubble games. And the number one seed in the East was still on the line at the time. The Milwaukee Bucks were trailing in that game by 17 points at halftime, 73-56. And this is coming off of a game where they lost to the Brooklyn Nets, who don't have Kevin Durant, don't have Kyrie Irving, and don't have Spencer Dinwiddie. And I'm really starting to get my concerns about the Bucks. And now we're talking about it now, and the Milwaukee Bucks defeated these same Miami Heat today, 130-116, by closing out the game on a 20-5 run. So the Bucks have officially locked up the number one overall seed for the Eastern Conference playoffs, and they still have the number one overall record in the league right now by the Lakers by about half of a game or a full game. But I still do have my concerns about this team, just simply because Giannis has not committed to getting, I'm not going to say Giannis hasn't committed to getting better at that three-point shot yet, but it's not exactly still working in his favor the way that I believe the Bucks would like for it to. And simply, I don't trust Chris Middleton. I don't trust Chris Middleton. I don't trust Eric Bledsoe. And I honestly don't trust Brook Lopez either. I'm not sure what to think about Giannis' supporting cast, because most of this supporting cast was there with him last season. And when they ran into a buzzsaw from a team like the Toronto Raptors, who could still present problems for them this year despite the fact that Kawhi Leonard is not there, I just still have my doubts when it comes to the Bucks. I would not pencil them down as a lock to come out of the Eastern Conference, even though they have clinched the number one overall seed. Mel, what are your thoughts?
Well, here,
do you have concerns about Giannis and his crew?
Wait, hold on, Mel. Before you answer that question, can I ask you guys a question, all right? Mel, was that a great segue by Xavier McKnight going from the Tampa Bay Bucks to the Milwaukee Bucks? Tell me that was a great segue, because I'm going to tell you, I've been in this business a long time, and that's as smooth a segue as you get. What do you think? Answer that question, Mel, then you can go on to his question.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great segue. There's no question about it. Yeah, I'm looking at you have to play to your strengths. A lot of these guys fall in love with the 3-point shot. And yes, Giannis is not, he is not, he's worked on his 3-point shot, but he's not a prolific 3-point shooter. What he is he's 6'11", and he's a mixed match for anybody that guards him. He's a tough guard for anybody that guards him. And they have to play to their strength. So they're big. That's one thing about them. They're big. And if they can, they can work from the inside out, I think that's going to be to their advantage. And when I say, and I'm not talking about Giannis being on the outside. They got some other guys that can stand around the 3-point line. Kyle Korver or Bledsoe. Even I know you don't like Middleton, but even Middleton, he's okay as a 3-point shooter. But they got to play from the inside out because they're a big team. And I think if they play from the inside out, they have a chance. Toronto's tough. There's no question about it. They play good team basketball. They lose the basketball. I think the thing that I don't like is the one-on-one basketball. I don't like when teams get stagnant in their offense, like the Lakers tend to do, where they like to do a lot of isolations. Even the pick-and-roll game, the pick-and-roll is good. I don't mind the pick-and-roll game so much, but the guys have to move without the basketball. And that's the thing that I like. When Golden State was going good, there's a lot of ball movement and man movement. And the ball can travel a lot faster than a person with the ball. So, but I think for Milwaukee, they just have to play to their strengths when, versus the particular opponent, whoever it is. Toronto's not they're not a big team necessarily. They got Gasol there in the middle, but they're not a big team necessarily. If they play inside out, I think that's their best chance to win is playing inside out. And Giannis being aggressive, attacking the rim, whether he's finishing at the rim or whether he's kicking out. That's where they'll be most successful. Obviously, if he does being said to randomly get to man one, he's got to make his foul shot.
Well, Scott, before you chime in, I'd like to clean up one thing here about my Chris Middleton point.
Okay.
I like Chris Middleton as a player. I know he's a good player. He's an all-star. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning how consistent he will become playoff time. Because when it's mattered in the previous few years for the Bucks, he's been the one guy who hasn't exactly been able to show up when they've needed him the most. When it happened against the Toronto Raptors and him not being able to be a factor, that played another major key into why the Raptors were able to complete that comeback the way that they did after losing the first 2 games of that series and going on to win the last 4. Now, also, when it comes down to Giannis, I don't necessarily want to see him shooting threes because I know that's not a strong part of his game yet, but I would like to see him develop more of a mid-range game at least, because the Toronto Raptors gave us the formula last year, and I believe you're going to see teams try to implement it this year, and it very well could be the Toronto Raptors, where, okay, let Giannis come down in the paint, let him come down, let him try to control the paint. If you put enough bodies on him, you can frustrate that part of his game. And if Giannis is not allowed to go into the paint, or if he can't get to the basket the way that he likes to, it changes the dynamic of the Milwaukee Bucks offense. And I just have questions about how consistent his supporting cast can be. Listen, it should be noted today, he was able to get the Bucks were able to get 33 points out of Chris Middleton, as well as 33 points from Giannis, but you expect that from Giannis by him being one of the 2 leading candidates for league MVP and him being the reigning league MVP right now. If Middleton can give them something close to this consistently when the playoffs do start up, I believe the Milwaukee Bucks can represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. But I have my questions about that with a team like the Toronto Raptors and maybe even the Boston Celtics, but more in particular the Toronto Raptors, because I understand they don't have a superstar anymore with Kawhi Leonard now being with the Clippers, but Pascal Siakam very well may be a superstar in the building. Scott, what are your thoughts on all of this? Do you have concerns about the Bucks? Because I know Giannis is one of our guys that we love to watch.
Well, the Milwaukee Bucks have proven that they're a great regular season team, but they haven't proven that they can seal the deal to get to the finals. So I have my skeptics. If I were taking a team to come out of the East, that may not resonate well with my Wisconsin fans and family, but I have to go with the Toronto Raptors. This is an organization which is on a mission to win another championship without Kawhi Leonard. Few people have to understand Nick Nurse, to me, is one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA. Now, let me go back to my history a little bit. There was a team called the Detroit Pistons that did not have a superstar. And by the way, they beat the LA Lakers, didn't they? Okay? So you don't need to have a superstar to win a title. Would you like to have one? Yes. Is it a requirement? No. Joe Dumars built that Detroit Pistons team so that they were balanced across the board, and as a result, they beat the LA Lakers. So I have my doubts about the Bucks right now. I hope the Bucks prove me wrong. I have no problem owning up to it down the road if they do prove me wrong. But if I were a betting man, I'm going with the Toronto Raptors. Superstar, no, because they are on a mission to win it without Kawhi Leonard.
Now, the Detroit Pistons may not have had a superstar, but they had 5 All-Stars.
True, but they didn't have that bona fide superstar, at least when Ben Wallace and company were there. You know, Chauncey Billups is your point guard, right? So, you know, Chauncey Billups, of course, but I'm saying you have 5 All-Stars. There's balance, Bell. But when we're talking about balance, which is good, didn't hurt they had a good coach in Larry Brown, of course, Chuck Daly, who I work with. But still, you know, Joe Dumars built that team without the intent that he was going to have that superstar player. And then when he went ahead and traded subsequently for Allen Iverson, unfortunately, the team that he built went downhill very quickly because he went against what got him that title. You guys follow me? That's just my opinion.
Yes, I follow you 100%. I follow you 100%, and I'm actually with you on that. I believe that these Toronto Raptors are a little more talented than those Detroit Pistons were, just from an athletic standpoint. And I'm glad you brought up the point of when they traded for Allen Iverson and how the wheels kind of pretty much started to fall off before then. But no, they started to actually fall off 2 years prior to that when they let Ben Wallace walk away in free agency.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was the key to that defense.
Yeah, he was. Ben Wallace went out there and hit a lot of the deficiencies of a lot of things, and he reminds me a lot of Dennis Rodman back in the Bad Boys. You guys have a great standout defensive player who wins Defensive Player of the Year that doesn't mind not scoring. That'll hide up a lot of weaknesses all day long. Why do you think the Bulls won a championship? Because Rodman doesn't care about scoring. He was more concerned about rebounds and doing the dirty work. And that's when you talk about great teams and how they're built over the years. You have that guy that does the dirty work. I don't know, Mel, you probably might remember this more than anything else. But remember one of the best defensive players that I think has ever played, doesn't get a lot of recognition. Remember Bobby Jones, Mel?
Yes.
Yeah, Bobby Jones.
Yes.
What's that?
You said with the 76ers, right?
Yeah, correct. Bobby Jones, heck of a defensive player. Defense cleans up the dirty work, let the offensive guys do their job. But, I'm not, again, Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman, and Bobby Jones, what they have in common, great defensive players. Go ahead, Xavier.
Well, Larry Brown was a defensive. He preached defense. You had to play defense for Larry Brown, otherwise you weren't going to play.
No question about it.
I mean, that's what made the Pistons, when the bad boy era, that's what made them the bad boys, because, Chuck Daly preached defense. You had to play defense. I mean, you have to be able to get some stops in order to win a championship. And the other thing I don't like with some teams, you go down and you have wasted possessions when you jack up a three and you get that long rebound and then they're off on the fast break and the other team either gets a 2 or a 3. That's I know we're not talking about it, but that's one of my problems with the Lakers. They fall too much in love with that 3-point shot, and they have not been shooting that ball very well since they've been down there in the bubble. They haven't been shooting very well. I mean, they played terrible yesterday. They looked terrible. But that 3 ball, when you jack up that 3, you get that long rebound, it's a transition basket on the other end. Because a lot of the guys aren't running back there, hustling back there for defense. And then that ball is moving so quick. The ball can move a lot faster than people. You start moving that ball around and find an open shooter. And the other teams have been draining their threes. And that's why the Lakers have been, kind of had the problem that they've had down there in the bubble.
Well, Mel, hold on to that thought because we're actually going to address the Lakers just a little later on. The last point I want to make for us to close out this topic is something that Scott said, and it's more of praise to the Toronto Raptors, even though this was a topic about the Milwaukee Bucks. Yes, Nick Nurse is emerging as a guy who I believe should be in the conversation as best coach in the NBA. And he has been one of the key components to why this Raptors team has been able to play as well as they have played this year. As much as I like Dwayne Casey, Nick Nurse clearly has been one of the answers to why that team was able to get over the hump like they did a season ago. So once again, congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks on clinching the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But we know that number 1 seeds do not guarantee you a spot in the NBA Finals. So we will have to continue to watch this team play to see what's going to happen. So now we transition to a slightly more serious topic, and we also await to see if this is also going to lead to a domino type of effect. On Wednesday, the University of Connecticut football program officially said that they are scrapping the 2020 football season. They are the first FBS team to do so in Division I play. And my question for you guys is, how much longer do you feel it will be before we start to see more FBS teams opting out to play? Mel, we'll start with you.
U-Conn's in a tough situation because they're changing conferences. They're leaving the AAC, they're going back to the Big East and everything except for football and a couple other sports, and they were going to be an independent this year as a football team. So they're playing a lot of teams in other conferences that are going to a conference only schedule. So I think they're down 5 games, I want to say.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Mel. I think they lost.
They only had maybe 6 or 7 games on their schedule,
right? And
then they say, hey, because of COVID and whatnot, that they're going to scrap the season. Now, it probably would have been a different outcome had they been in a conference.
Oh yeah,
this particular year. But
yeah, Mel.
They're playing as an independent. A lot of their games have been canceled, so it just made more economic sense for them just to go ahead and scrap the season. Do I foresee that happening? It could happen with other independents. We talked about that before. It could happen with other independents. Notre Dame is going to play an ACC schedule this year, so they had kind of a relationship with the ACC anyway, but they're going to play an ACC schedule this year, and they're also going to get an opportunity to compete for an ACC championship. but you might see it with some other independents. I don't know about other conferences, and it really depends on what's going on in other states. I know California right now, they're not even allowed to get together to start the practice right now. So I don't know how, they're only they're playing a conference schedule, but there's other states in that conference. You got Arizona in there, you got Oregon, you got Washington, you got Utah. I don't know what's going on in those other states as far as teams being able to prepare for the season. But if the California schools aren't able to prepare for the season, obviously they're going to be at a serious disadvantage. Again, I think these guys are kicking the can farther down just kicking the can down the street just to try to see what the landscape looks come September 1, come the middle of September, and see where everything is with this COVID and see whether or not they can go ahead and have a season. And then what kind of outbreaks they had during training camp. You can get, unfortunately, you get both. You're either gonna protect everybody. Nobody's gonna come down with COVID, or everybody's gonna come down with it, or the majority of people are gonna come down with it. So if nobody comes down with it, then you're in good shape. If everybody comes down with it, the majority of the kids come down with it during camp, then they can resolve, they can get better, and then hopefully they have some immunity built up, and then they can go ahead and play their season. I mean, I think that's how these conferences are looking at it.
Hey, by the way, Mel, I just found out, I believe that U-Conn lost 4 games, so that just backs up what you're talking about. So when you have 7 left, then it made a whole lot of sense to scrap the season. Another thing that I just found out, too, your alma mater, UCLA, has 8 COVID cases. So there you go. You talk about the California fact. I just wanted to tie those 2 points to you, to add a little bit to it, okay?
Yep.
There you go.
Yep, I had read about them having 8 COVID cases.
Right, UCLA has it. So, again, you got 8 UCLA. We don't know where the dominoes are going to drop. We're looking at the calendar right now as we speak. It's August 6th. We still have some time. Continue, Xavier.
So, Scott, before you chime in, I'd like to read off the statement that U-Conn head coach Randy Edsall said to Fox Business Network's Oviedo Coast to Coast on Today when they were asking him, why is this happening at the university? And he said, as we continue to move forward through the month of July, you could just see there were obstacles in the way that we didn't feel that you could overcome. And Scott, before you chime in, I'd just like to say that, as tough as a decision as this may have been, I applaud the university for doing this, protecting the interests of the players, protecting the coaches, protecting everybody involved in this. Now, I do agree with Mel from the standpoint that had they been in a conference, this probably would have played out much differently. But kudos to them just for being safe and being precautious on this. And I'm not saying that as a shame towards the other teams and conferences that are playing right now. I get it. This is a business and there is money to be made. And as much as people may not necessarily realize this, I understand that U-Conn's basketball programs, in particular their women's basketball program, they are the most celebrated women's basketball program in the country today. They are the most celebrated athletic program at that university. But most universities are funded mostly through college football. And I don't know if this is also the case at the University of Connecticut, but this could very well hurt them fiscally and economically too. Well, we'll have to see how this plays out. But kudos to them on just making this decision just in the best interest of the players by understanding that things are not coming together the way that they should be coming together for us right now.
Xavier, let me make one other point that we have to make sure that we don't omit, and that being this. Okay, U-Conn has a buyout with the American Athletic Conference, and that's factoring into the financial situation as well. That for them to go back to the Big East, they had to pay a buyout to get out of it. So when you tie the finances there, that's where the monetary thing that we've talked about comes into play. So I just thought I'd throw that at you guys, that there's a little bit more money involved than what meets the eye. So continue on.
Well, no, those are my only thoughts on that. I was going to transition to you next to get your thoughts on this segment.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's what I think about U-Conn. Made the right decision to get out of football this year.
Yes, I definitely agree with that as well. Mel, do you have any other thoughts on this topic?
I think that's a great decision. I think it's the only thing it could be. And I think it's, I think it's a good decision for the student athletes, especially with everything that's going on right now and the uncertainty.
Okay.
So we all agree that this is a great decision on the part of U-Conn, and that's great to hear. And now we transition back to a league that had nothing but great things happen so far since they have been a part of the bubble, that being the NBA. But one of their leading teams, they don't appear to be in good standings right now. And we're talking about the Los Angeles Lakers. Despite the fact that the Lakers did clinch the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference on Monday after defeating the Utah Jazz, the Lakers do not appear to be championship ready right now at this moment. And I'm saying that in my opinion, but I'm also just saying this just by looking at what I'm seeing on the floor. Mel, you mentioned this earlier. The Lakers looked absolutely horrible yesterday against an Oklahoma City team. And at some point, we're going to have to say, who are the other players on this team that will step up when needed besides LeBron James and Anthony Davis? We know that those are your big two pieces. We know that those are two top 5 players in the league. Some people may say 2 top 10 players in the league, depending on where you have Anthony Davis in your standings. But I have questions about this roster after that. Rajon Rondo is on his way back to Florida to continue his rehab from a broken hand. He'll be back, and that should be helpful to them. But my question to that is, with Rondo coming back, how long is it going to be before he gets injured again? Because ever since Rajon Rondo has been in Los Angeles, and knock on wood, I hope he doesn't get injured again, especially with these hand injuries. Ever since he's had that LA Lakers jersey on, his hands have basically been fragile, and it's almost like they're made out of glass. And it's like these happen on freak plays. It's not him being caught up and tangled up fighting for the ball and somebody accidentally hit your hand. No, like this, I've seen this happen with him on one occasion where he's dribbling the ball and just like his hand just might give out or something awkward may happen with this situation. And another thing about the Lakers to me, I don't trust Frank Vogel as a head coach. I don't trust him in some situations when it comes to situational basketball. I don't like the way that he uses Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma comes off the bench and he usually comes in and he gives them a spark, especially late in the second half of games. But Frank Vogel will take him out of the game in favor of guys like Danny Green and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who are giving the Lakers absolutely nothing right now since we have been down in the NBA bubble. And now that poses the question that I have for the both of you, and Mel, I'll start this one off with you as well. If the Portland Trail Blazers end up getting into the Western Conference playoffs with this number 8 seed, are the Lakers going to have problems in the first round with this team? Because we're talking about now Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, the second or third best backcourt in the league, with a healthy Yusuf Nurkic, a healthy Zach Collins. Hassan Whiteside comes off the bench, and he may be able to do some things for you, especially when it comes down to guarding the rim. And a Carmelo Anthony who is down in the bubble right now playing like he has something to prove. Now, he's not putting up superstar numbers anymore, and I didn't expect him to do that. But Carmelo is making shots in very key moments, and he's in the best shape that he's been in maybe a decade from now. Mel, are the Lakers in trouble if they meet up with the Blazers in the first round?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, the Blazers are long. You look at the positions. You know, the guards are better than the Lakers guards. Okay, you can say forwards are a push, but the centers are better than the Lakers center, and the bench is more productive than the Lakers. And like I said, my problem with the Lakers is they have too many empty possessions, and when they get behind quickly and by a lot because they fall in love with that 3-point shot. Having LeBron bring the ball down is a blessing and a curse, in my opinion, because everybody stands around. Unless they get into the pick and roll game, which they haven't been doing a lot of pick and roll since they got back in the bubble. It's just a one-on-one. He's trying to do something, and since they got in the bubble, he hasn't been able to finish at the rim. He's missing layups at the rim, even putbacks. He's been missing putbacks at the rim, so you can see there's rust on LeBron, and he's trying to play his way through the rush. You can see his jump shot's not there. His foul shooting is not. He's never been a great foul shooter, but he's not making those and ones. Just yesterday, he missed 2 foul shots in a row. I mean, that's something that he typically doesn't do. So I'm very, because the Lakers are my team. So yeah, I'm extremely concerned about the Lakers and what they're going to do. Now, as far as Rondo, you can't depend on Rondo to be there. I like what Dion Waiters is bringing off the bench. I like his energy. I like his effort. I like what he is bringing. I think, as he gets more games underneath his belt, I think Deion Waiters is going to be a welcome addition for the Lakers come playoff. We know what J.R. Smith is capable of doing. He can get buckets and bunches. I'm with you as far as Kyle Kuzma is concerned. Now you have to remember, before the break, Kyle Kuzma wasn't shooting the ball very well. That's because he was hurt. He got hurt playing the USA basketball, injured his ankle, so he was limited in camp. And he really started off the year slow, wasn't really shooting the ball that well. He's come back after 4 months off. He's shooting the ball well, and I think he's going to be real big as far as their success in the playoffs, as far as how he plays. McGee, I don't know what to say about JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. I know that Anthony Davis doesn't like to play the five, but really puts us at a disadvantage, in my opinion, when we got McGee out there and we had Dwight Howard out there. He's not the same player that he was at one time. Where I don't think Dwight has the same kind of confidence anymore in his game that he used to have. But I'm extremely concerned about the Lakers. One man can't win, and LeBron has not been playing that well. He has not played that well in the bubble.
And Scott, before you chime in, I'd like to add in my other thoughts about this. Because, Mel, you brought up things on the offensive end. I have my concerns about them on the defensive end as well. I have my concerns about who are you going to put on Damian Lillard and who are you going to put on C.J. McCollum and who are you going to put to try to contain what Yusuf Nurkic will bring to that Blazers offense around the basket. They win at the guard. They have the better guards. There's no question about it. Forwards, you can say, is a push. And they also have the better big man. And I also feel that they have a better bench, too. I also feel they have a better bench, too, with guys like Gary Trent Jr., coming off the bench and him doing what he does, and Hassan Whiteside. And I know that there are the jokes out there about Hassan Whiteside, but I would not want to contend with Hassan Whiteside at the rim right now. I still believe that he has the potential to be close to that double-double guy coming off the bench that he was in Miami just a few years ago. He's not going to give you great numbers, but you don't need him to give you great numbers. You need him to give you great plays and to give you great energy. And once again, I don't trust Frank Vogel, and sometimes when it comes to situational basketball. And we know that in this league, as in any other league, coaching matters. So with that being said, Scott, do you feel that the Lakers are in trouble?
To some extent. And I'll say to some extent, Carmelo Anthony is on a mission. Nobody wanted him. The Blazers have him. But I don't think they're in as bad a trouble as you think. I think the only thing that the Lakers, they sunk a lot of money into a few key players, so what do you expect to have for the rest of your bench? What you have. A bunch of role players to complement basically Anthony Davis and LeBron James. That's what you have. I don't know whether I would examine Frank Vogel yet. I'm not ready to quite give up on that yet. But you have a couple superstar players and you're filling in the bench. But remember, I'm looking at a Portland Trailblazer team that, with all the good things we're saying, their record currently is 31 wins and 38 losses with a .449 winning percentage. They're playing to get in the playoffs. So in order to be a threat to the Lakers, they need to get in the playoffs. I'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I'm not as concerned about the Lakers at the moment as you guys perhaps are. But again, I'll go back to the only point I can say. You invest a lot of money into a couple key players, and you're filling out the bench. That's what I have to say.
Well, I mean, the Clippers have done the same thing.
Right.
They've invested a lot of money in a couple players, too.
Right.
But the difference is they acquired Paul George in a trade, but they really didn't give up a whole lot for Paul George. The Lakers gave up a lot for Anthony Davis.
Right.
They gave up a lot of bodies and draft capital for Anthony Davis. But the Lakers half court, their half court game is not good right now. They're transitioning. They like to get out and run the ball. They like to get out and run, but they have not been able to do that. And their half court game is not very good right now.
The only thing I'll say about the LA Clippers, they've never made it to the NBA Finals, and I don't see them making it to the NBA Finals this year. When they get to the finals, talk to me. But they haven't. I'll still.
I understand.
I'll hedge my bets with the Lakers until I'm proven otherwise. Go ahead, Xavier.
My apologies for that, Scott. I understand what you're saying with that right there. The only thing I want to remind everyone of is the fact that this Clippers team, they still have those main three guys on that team from last season, Lou Williams, Patrick Beverly, and Montrezl Harrell, who, after they traded all of their stars away, after Blake Griffin was gone, after Tobias Harris was gone, after DeAndre Jordan was gone, we thought that team was going to go into full tank mode. And instead, they fought tooth and nail and found a way to clinch that number 8 seed in the Western Conference playoffs last year. And this is without a superstar on the team. And they took on one of the more loaded rosters we've ever seen in NBA history, the Kevin Durant-led Golden State Warriors. And they gave them everything they could handle in the first round. So that's just where I see the differences when it comes to the Clippers and the Lakers. Yes, both teams do have 2 superstars, but I definitely trust the Clippers supporting cast a little better. But I'm with you on this side.
You trust the coach more too.
Yes, I do. I definitely trust Doc Rivers and his staff a lot more than I trust Frank Vogel as well.
I'll give you that.
I'm still with Scott on this. Until the Clippers make it to an NBA Finals, I'm not going to pick them to make it to an NBA Finals just yet.
Yeah, I have no problem with Doc Rivers. Great coach. Definitely going in the Hall of Fame. But I still, until the Clippers make it to the Finals, then I'll stay with the team that wears purple and gold, and I'll go with the Lakers. They'll work through it with Frank Vogel. But again, LeBron James has to obviously work off the rust, and I know Anthony Davis is a fine player, and the rest, TBD.
Mel, do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, not on that. I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think so too.
So for our next topic, we're going to stay right here in the Sunshine State. We're just going to travel north, though. We're going to go from the NBA bubble up to Doak Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee, where the Florida State University football program announced today that when the football season does kick off, when their college football season kicks off for this fall, in their home games, they will only be allowing 20 to 25% capacity of fans to be in the stands today. Do you guys like what Florida State's doing here, just trying to have some fans in capacity, or do you feel that it's smarter for them to not have any fans in capacity until we know for a fact that COVID-19 is under control? Scott, I actually want you to start this one off first.
Ask me at the end of the month. They're hoping to have 20 to 25%. I know they're saying it, but I'll see it to believe it. I will. Idea is noble and fine, but when I see bodies in the stands, right now I'm not holding my breath. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't.
Yeah, especially with everything that's going on in the state of Florida right now. I think that's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's what they'd like to see happen. But, they got to, you got to think of those students. You got to think of those students first, because that's what you're really talking about, is the students and having something for them to be when they get to campus. And I think that's wishful thinking.
Me too.
That makes 3 of us on this. I believe it's wishful thinking as well. It should be noted that we're starting to see case numbers go down in Florida day by day. The death rate numbers are slowly starting to go down as well. So right when we thought they may have had this thing under control in May, this thing bloomed and blossomed out of nowhere towards the end of June and July once again with the cases. So I believe it's wishful thinking as well. And one more note I want to add to this before we move on to our next topic. Governor Ron DeSantis did say today that he is pushing to reschedule the Florida and Florida State rivalry game. Now, I don't know if he means if he wants to do that for the 2020 season, but here's what DeSantis has to say today during a press conference when he was speaking about the upcoming college football season. He said that we do have a situation coming up where we're going to have a college football season without Florida playing Florida State. And then he turned around and he referenced Charlie Ward, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from Florida State back in 1993, and former University of Florida cornerback Lito Shepherd, who also went on to play in 2 Pro Bowls as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. His quote continued by saying, "Charlie, Lito, I am going to see if we can make sure that rivalry game continues, because I know it's one we all look forward to every year." Now, as I said, I don't know if he's planning to do that for the 2020 year or if that's something they're planning to do for 2021. And it's significant for us to bring that up because these are 2 separate conferences, Florida and the SEC, Florida State and the ACC. We know that these conferences have basically committed to only playing an in-conference schedule.
Well,
I don't see that changing.
I don't either. I hope he does it, but I'm not holding my breath. How many times are we going to talk about wishful thinking. I don't see it, but, they're certainly willing to try. Because if you're going to talk about Florida State, I understand where the governor's coming from. It's all well and fine. But what happens with a lot of the other in-state rivalries as well? You're going to get momentum for those, even though the conferences are the ones dictating this? I'm not holding my breath. But I'd like to see it happen.
All right, and Scott, can you segue us into our next topic?
Absolutely. 68 players are opting out of the 2020 NFL season as deadline passes. For some reason or another, Mel and Xavier, I think that number seems relatively low. Does it? 68 out.
Mel, you go ahead and you start this one off.
Well, I guess it's relatively low in comparison to the number of players that play in the league. But that's a big number, when you're talking about, especially with the impact of certain teams. Some teams have been impacted more than others. Look at the Patriots have had quite a few more players opt out. And so, it's a big number for them. When you're talking about guys giving up a season of playing and also of pay, that's a big number to me. But there's, all these guys have their reasons for doing it, and most of them are putting their health first and their family's health first. And that's what's most important. They play the game to make a living for their families. And their family, the driving force behind it is their family. Yeah, it's a game, and we all enjoy playing it, and we enjoy watching it. They enjoy getting paid for it. But at the end of the day, they're more than just a football player. They're also husbands and fathers and brothers and sons and so forth and so on. So they also have to look at the bigger picture, and this is bigger than them, and be more concerned about their families than they are the paycheck that will be coming this season.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know, 68 players out of how many? That's why I say it's low, but it's still a fair amount. But I guess the only thing I wonder is, does the NFL make it to their opening game is anybody's guess. But we still, again, I'll reiterate, we're talking August 6th. We'll see. But 68 players seems like it's a lot. It's really low considering how many players are employed by the NFL. Okay.
It definitely is, and here's what I'll say in regards to it. Scott, I'm with you on this because when we first started to see these numbers of players opting out this time last week, the question we were asking ourselves was, is this going to start to become a domino effect to where it's going to get to a point of where the league may have a vast lack amount of players to where they might have to consider doing something as an alternative for the 2020 season, or if they're going to have to reduce the schedule, or if they might have to create a bubble of some sort. That doesn't appear to be the case at all right now. 68 players out of the many players that play in the league. And yeah, that's a pretty relatively low number right now. The only team that honestly has concerns about true opt-outs right now, and Mel brought it up earlier, are the New England Patriots. And it's not even necessarily the amount of players that are opting out. It is the players themselves who are opting out. You have players like Dante Hightower who are opting out. Patrick Chung is opting out. These are players who we know are difference makers on that team. So that's only where the significance of the true opting out comes in for me right there. As of right now, I'm still remaining optimistic that we will have a football season of some sort. But as Scott has already said, it is only August the 6th. We will have to continue to wait and see how these things play out.
Okay. Final thing we're going to talk about today, Lambeau Field will not host its fans during the first two home games. They'll reevaluate it. The third home game is November 1st versus the Minnesota Vikings. All right, well, I don't know. I love Lambeau Field. If there's anything that anybody out here should have on their bucket list, get to Lambeau Field, though I don't think you're going to get around to it this year. But, what are your thoughts, Mel, about Lambeau Field not having fans there? I don't know whether that would jeopardize their sellout streak or not. That's something that would come into question. But then COVID-19 seems to mess everything up, so it doesn't make any difference anyways. So we'll put the sellout streak on the back burner. Mel, what are your thoughts about Lambeau not having fans for the first two games and then potentially a third one versus Minnesota? And then we'll compound the thing is even if they do, how many fans would be allowed to come in when you have season ticket holders up to Wang, all the way from Green Bay all the way to Milwaukee? Mel, you can go ahead and chime in on this one first, please.
Yeah, again, it's public safety. I mean, you have to look at what's going on in that state right now with the number of outbreaks. And again, these guys, I mean, they're going to do everything they can, everything in their power to, number one, make sure they can have, the first thing they want to do is make sure they can have games so they can televise them. Obviously, they make a lot of money from ticket sales as well at the stadiums, but they have to, they got to take care of the players first so we have players out there playing. The second thing is, they got to look at it from a public health standpoint with the fans. So again, all they're trying to do is kick the can down the road a little bit, give themselves an opportunity to see what the lay of the land looks like come the middle of September, and then they'll make a decision at that particular time. But they've already made the decision right now. The first 2 games, there won't be any fans, so people can already have that set already in their head that there won't be any fans in the first 2 games, and then they'll reevaluate, they'll reassess things, and look at the landscape, see how everything is going, see what the numbers are, and then they can make a determination as to fans going into the games after that, and then how many fans are allowed to come into the stands at that particular time. But that's going to be how it is for everybody. I mean, everybody's going to take a look at it and see whether or not they're going to allow fans, and then how many fans they're going to allow to have come in there. And it's going to be different in every state. It's going to be different in every state because some states are not allowing it to happen. They're not going to allow people to congregate in those type of areas. Some states are like that. I think California is one of those states where they're just not going to allow it. Other states, you can do those things. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out this year.
Yeah, again, I'm one of those see it to believe it. Right now, at this particular point, we'll see how long the season goes. If there's an outbreak of any kind, knowing that this is the one sport that is not in a bubble, that's a different conversation, and I'll certainly like to examine in the coming weeks as we continue to do this broadcast. Xavier, what are your thoughts about no fans at Lambeau Field?
I love that they put this plan in the process right now, just simply because I feel that this is the best thing that they can do for right now. They're pushing the wait-and-see game the best way you can possibly do it. You don't want to completely cancel fans for the entire season if there is going to be a season in its entirety, because you don't know what's going to happen with this virus. You don't know how this virus is going to look in November and December and in early January once we get there. So you don't want to completely cancel fans out right now. But I applaud them taking the strategies and the steps right now, knowing, hey, at least for the month of September, we're not going to have fans here in the stadium, and we'll just continue to evaluate it. We'll evaluate the case numbers. We'll evaluate how the virus is doing in the state, how the virus is doing in the country, and then we'll make the decision from there. And as Mel already said, we'll just continue to see more teams make this decision as well, simply because some of these states are not going to allow people to gather and congregate in that type of manner anyway. So I believe in the next upcoming days, we'll just see even more NFL teams coming out with strategies very similar to this.
Well, I'll tell you what, Xavier and Mel, no broadcast would be complete without the Green Bay Packers unless Candy Ebling wants to go ahead and give her 2 cents on the subject. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm giving her the microphone. She can talk right into my microphone. And Candy, go ahead and will there be fans at Lambeau?
Actually, I want to comment about that, but I actually have a question for Mel regarding that. So I get the pandemic is all over, and I've watched some baseball games. We've seen no fans in the stands, and I would think of all the sports that fans in the stands are very much a part of the play. Like, let's face it, like in Seattle, they're considered the 13th player. So, Mel, if you were playing today, how would that change or affect your game, knowing that, like, play calling, you're calling things in the huddle, and you can hear more things now, because you can hear the huddles because there is no other background noise. So how would that affect the teams?
Well, to be honest with you, when you're out there playing, the only time you really hear the fans are when you run out of the tunnel. At the beginning of the game, and maybe when you're on the sidelines, you might, notice the fans. But when you're out on the field, it's quiet. To be honest with you, you don't hear all that. All that's blocked out. And I can't really explain it, but you're so focused on what it is that you have to do that you don't hear all of that. So, I played, obviously you have scrimmages against other teams where there's no fans, and the competition is very, very good. It's a high level competition. And so for a lot of, for these teams, it's going to be like, basically like a scrimmage. but it's still going to be high-level competition. The only time you really notice the fans and when you really appreciate it is when you run out of the tunnel and you look up at the stadium and you see that place is, packed to capacity with fans screaming and hollering. But after that, other than, maybe being on the sidelines and, maybe interacting with some fans or something like that, you're really just tuned into your job and what it is that you have to do and what it is you're trying to accomplish. You don't even hear it. It's quiet out there. I don't know how to explain it, but it's quiet.
Okay, that's fair. All right, well, guys, I think we've covered everything. With that said, okay, we're going to go ahead and let Mel Farr go ahead. Anything else you guys want to add to the broadcast before we put a lid on this one?
I don't have anything else.
What about you, Xavier?
No, I don't have anything else. I don't have anything else to add either.
All right, then the only thing we're going to add is how everybody can get a hold of one another. How's that sound? And we'll wrap this bad boy up. Our goal is to do better every week that we do this. So go ahead, Mel Farr, you lead it off, all right? And don't be afraid to promote your youth programs because they're extremely admirable, and everybody loves to hear those. So go ahead, Mel, take it away.
Yeah, on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Anthony Reese at Mel Farr Jr. My email is melfarrjr@gmail.com. And then, what we're doing for the kids as far as our camps, you can follow us at, you can see what we're doing at melfarr.org.
Go ahead, Xavier.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at XTMCKNIGHII. The two I's at the end are both capitalized. You can follow me on Instagram at XMCKNIGH22. You can send me a friend request and a follow request on LinkedIn and Facebook simply by typing in Xavier McKnight. And you can also listen to me every other Friday here on the WFAN network on The Real and the Rare, where we will be having our show tomorrow night.
Very good. Hey, Mel, this guy's full of segues. All right. A1 for Xavier. All right.
Sure.
What's that?
No, I said, yes, sir.
Oh, you've done a fantastic job, as both you guys. In terms of how you're going to get a hold of us, let me point out you're listening to the Sports Exchange here on the South Florida Tribune Network and the WSAN Network. Let me point out how you can get these broadcasts. You can subscribe to us through Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. If I've spoken too fast, I've been accused of it a lot. I will try to go a little slower. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Other information you should be aware of, you can find me on Twitter at Tribune South. That's the @ Tribune South. Facebook, South Florida Tribune. Instagram, South Florida Tribune. I have a YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. Mel, when I get out to Atlanta, you and I are definitely going to do one of those videos. How's that sound? You pick the spot, we'll do one together. All right? My running back and whatever you want to call me. Website, go to www.southfloridatribune.com. You can also find our broadcast on there as well. Email me at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And you're also welcome to go out there and connect with me on LinkedIn. So, guys, I'll tell you what, I don't know about you guys, but I feel pretty good about what we accomplished tonight. I know that a lot of the subjects that we spoke about, we're certainly going to have some TBDs connected to it. So, guys did an awesome job. At this particular point, I'm speechless. I enjoy what you guys. You two are outstanding and consummate professionals. So, with that said, any last thing to say before we ask Mel Farr to have a good time with his family the rest of the night?
Well, just one other thing I'd like to add to everybody. As I said earlier, we will be having The Real and the Rare tomorrow night here on the WFAN network. Just a sneak peek into some of the entrees we'll be dishing out in our kitchen tomorrow night. We will be discussing more about how some of the sports leagues have handled the COVID-19 pandemic in the midst of them coming back into gameplay. And I'll leave it at that. Don't want to give you all too much.
You don't have to leave it at that. You can leave it at that. All I can tell you, the recurring theme that I've been impressed with, as we have alluded to a little bit, is I'm pleasantly surprised at how the NBA's handled it. With that said, okay, thanks for joining us on tonight's edition of the Sports Exchange. On behalf of Mel Farr Jr. and Xavier McKnight, my name is Scott Morgan Roth of Motor City Madmouth. Wishing you a good evening, everybody.